Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 22 of the Rings of Power Wrap-Up.
It's time to pull up a bench here in the common room, folks. I'm James Tauber, the Sage of the South.
And I'm Sara Brown, Shield Maiden of Rohan, and we're both here with the Man of the West, Alan Sisto.
Thank you, Sara. Tonight, we're going to be chatting with some of the incredibly talented team behind that stunning opening title sequence on Rings of Power.
This is going to be amazing, folks, so do stick around. A quick welcome for those of you joining us for the first time. Here at the Rings of Power Wrap-Up, we talk about the plot, characters, and lore behind Amazon's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power.
We also dive into some of Tolkien's biggest themes, things like mortality, free will, and fellowship, and also apparently cymatics. But we also do our fair share of speculating, but not this time.
You'll learn something new about Middle-earth every time you listen. We hope you have a few laughs in the process. We're glad you've joined us.
And we hope you'll be glad you joined as well. Now, before we get into this week's episode, we want to remind you to check out Alan's original show, The Prancing Pony Podcast.
For nearly 7 years now, the Prancing Pony Podcast has walked its way through Tolkien's books, from the Silmarillion to the Lord of the Rings. And this season, the podcast is continuing that effort with the Return of the King.
And this season, I'm co-hosting episodes with a real all-star lineup of people from the Tolkien community. Humbly, I would like to think that there's no better companion for your extended trip through Middle-earth than the Prancing Pony Podcast.
Now, before we get to this week's release, do we have any clarifications to make from last week's episode?
Indeed we do, actually. We heard from Chad K., who wrote in about metallurgy and alloys after our discussion about the crafting of the three rings in episode 8. Now, Chad's degree is in materials science engineering. He's a longtime mechanical engineer and also spent 3 years working in a foundry, so I'd say he's qualified, and we'll need to have a listen to what he says. Sara?
Okay, so Chad says, regarding the coaxing of the metal together, I think essentially what Halbrand was hinting at can be boiled down to the forging process. Some alloys have to be forged at certain temperatures. Some alloys can be forged cold, and if what Halbrand and Celebrimbor initially set out to do was to simply heat and forge the mithril, they may not have been getting the results they wanted. So the coaxing of metals together could refer to the fact that some alloys can be forged and folded together using heat and force, and some alloys would have to be combined first, melted down, and then forged from a single billet, which is that rectangle you called an ingot.
Yes, and I knew ingot was the wrong word. Billet. That is the word I was looking for. I just couldn't find it in my brain that day, so thank you, Chad. Now, he goes on to say that instead of heating and beating the metals together, the idea apparently was to melt them down together and then make that billet from a homogenized alloy.
Now, he goes on to point out that Celebrimbor really should have known about this process, and quite possibly did, but he argues that it isn't too far-fetched to not think of that from the get-go, because innovation is a very slow process with a lot of trial and error. Most of the time, it takes one person to propose an obvious idea that was overlooked to come to a solution. Especially if you take into account Celebrimbor's blind ambition. Sometimes your ambition can blind you to the answers that are right in front of you.
True.
Is that blind ambition or blonde ambition? I don't know.
A little bit of both.
Right. Now, Chad also points out in regards to Celebrimbor's need for pure gold and silver that purity is indeed crucial. He says making alloys is a bit like baking a cake. Certain ingredients need to be added or mixed in at certain times, temperatures and quantities in order for the cake to come out tasting good. What if you add too much flour? What if you add brown sugar instead of white sugar? 2 eggs instead of 3? And what if your flour was actually 50% sugar? Alloys are very similar, so too much or too little can screw up the alloy, and specifically any unplanned impurities in the metal can definitely mess with the final properties.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally agree. Though I admit I don't think I want a metal cake at my next birthday party. Actually, maybe like a really heavy metal cake. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. So my question, at least the question I'm thinking of now in regards to the purity, isn't whether purity is important. I certainly agree with that. My question is whether, and why, if it is Valinorian gold and silver pure? Why would gold in Middle-earth be less pure than gold in Valinor? And then I guess secondarily, if it is less pure, couldn't it go through a purification process prior to being used to make an alloy? I don't know. I like to get into the details like this. It's fun. Still, this is a very insightful email from Chad, and I really want to give him our thanks for shedding more light on the subject. But now we're going to go ahead and get to the meat of this episode. We are joined today by a big team of folks led by the directors and creators of the title sequence. From Plains of Yonder, Katrina Crawford and Mark Bayshore.
We're also joined by their creative director, Anthony Vitagliano. Katrina and Anthony are also art directors, and Mark serves as editor.
We're also joined by another art director, the lead 3D artist from MacMac, Mauro Gimfere.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on the Rings of Power wrap-up.
Glad to be here.
Good to be here.
Great to be here.
Excellent. Well, we don't really have questions specifically for each of you, so feel free to jump in as we ask these. I suppose this first one is probably more for Katrina and Mark. How did you land this project? Had you already envisioned this particular opening before pitching it to the showrunners, and did you have a demonstration ready for them at that time?
No, we got an email, a good old-fashioned email saying we'd like to see your main titles reel. We don't get those emails very often. Just sort of anonymously, although it was from a post-producer in New Zealand with Amazon Productions. And so we don't keep up with the TV times super well, but we were like, I wonder if that couldn't be the Lord of the Rings project. No, they would be calling us.
Surely not.
Yeah, I mean, we are a small company, at least as main titles go. Mm-hmm. The category is dominated by pretty large Los Angeles, New York, or London, or concerns that make it an industry, and that's in some cases that's all they do. It's not all we do. We do 2 or 3 titles a year. So even though we did submit our reel, we still were. This isn't false humility. We actually were like, they wouldn't call a 2-person company for Lord of the Rings. That seems a little risky, but indeed they liked what we had, and I'm trying to remember, Katrina, I think they said we had a week or something like 6-7 days.
It was very quick turnaround.
Wow.
Yeah. And we pitched maybe 5 or 6 different ideas, and 2 of them they really liked. So we actually further developed 2 ideas and presented again to them. Mm-hmm. So that process was a little bit, elongated. And then they chose this one, and we went to work.
I assume you usually get more than a week to put together ideas usually?
It's always different, but yes, that would be on the short side.
I think they put us on with the showrunners and the executive producers for, maybe 45 minutes. And that was actually really rewarding because they were really gracious and patient, and even more so when we presented some of the most gracious and patient and kind clients we've ever worked with in this category, and mostly trusting of the process. I mean, this is, as you can imagine, like extremely important show and a lot of money and all that on the line, and their reputations as first-time showrunners. Mm-hmm. And they let us free. I mean, we pitched the concept, and Anthony was on board from the very beginning. And Anthony, you should talk a little bit about the concept itself, how it came to be. But just to follow up on that thought before we get to that, they loved it. They loved 2 ideas, but that one quickly rose to the top. And they let us go make it with very, very little interference. Is kind of amazing.
Mm-hmm. And it's always interesting how much information you get in the beginning. Sometimes you get scripts, sometimes you get further. This, because of the secrecy and the importance of the show, they showed us a few icons and we had some conversations with them. But really it was, loose and open. So that was very fun, but also, stab in the dark.
Not a lot of stuff to go on.
I was going to ask how much they had told you about the show beforehand. I mean, we can get into that whole question of the origin of the concept. How much of that came from what they told you? How much of that was what you brought to them in terms of your proposal?
Well, it was really cool. Like Mark said, they were very open-ended. They said they were looking for simple and elegant and stark, and it needed to encapsulate this world. They asked for us to surprise them. So, I mean, that open-endedness and that trusting was super critical and just great for the creative process. They also did tell us that there were that nature and kind of that, I think they described it as dirt under the fingernails. Authenticity was very important to the show.
Okay. I have to just comment real briefly, and maybe in your conversations with the showrunners, they gave you some information similar to what I'm about to say. You talked about how they gave you free rein and they just trusted the process and they took a very hands-off approach in that regard. In my conversations with the showrunners, they talked about that's the approach that Amazon's given them, that they came to them with this pitch, surprised Amazon with this whole idea of a second age show when it's based on the Lord of the Rings and the appendices. And then they were basically given a blank check and no direct control from Amazon. And it sounds like they've turned around and given you sort of the very same terms, if you will, and as it relates to your creation of the opening.
I like that idea of contagion.
Yeah. Yeah. It struck me as being very similar to the way they described their pitch and then their ability to run the show.
Wow, that's great.
What inspired you to use somatics in this sequence? Had you done it before?
Well, we have a bunch of musicians in our group, our whole team, so there's some awareness of it. But Anthony, do you want to answer in terms of someone who came at this from not the Tolkien world?
Before you start, Anthony, I'll say when Anthony came on the team, we were like, we have about 8 days to come up with ideas for the biggest TV show.
No pressure.
And he goes, the first thing he said was, just so you know, I never watched the Jackson movies.
Yeah, let him tell. This is perfect. You need this
what a
outsider view.
We found one.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a very small number of people.
No, yes, actually, the aspect of Tolkien and Jackson, all of Lord of the Rings, honestly, was somewhat foreign to me. I mean, I actually had a buddy in high school who was obsessed with Lord of the Rings, and I did see one film, Fellowship of the Ring, in the theaters, midnight showing, because he dragged me there, and I actually loved it. And I have a memory of the world being amazing, and the idea of world building and what that means as a creative person is just mind blowing. Like that, there's one person who can play God in a way and create something so imaginative in a fantasy world. And so I thought back actually to that moment when Mark told me about it. And I was like, well, I kind of remember seeing Fellowship of the Rings, but I remember the feeling I got of like pure creativity, how that like was inspiring to me. And so, not knowing much about the world, I had to dive in. I had a few days. And so, I went to the library and I got all the books and ordered things off Amazon of his artwork and things of like that nature. And I was trying to like soak it all in. Wow. All the Wikipedia pages. I think I probably listened to your podcast. It was all of those things. And, the idea of a main title should come back to a very unique kind of distillization of an idea, because you're not trying to tell the show what it's going to be. You're trying to prime people for something. And so, for me, I was like, okay, this Tolkien fella, he is like God. What was his creation story? Like, how did Middle Earth come to be? It was literally that insight of what maybe that's a great way to start the show. And as I started reading in the Wikipedia entry around the music of the Ainur, I believe it's described as, or at least it's called.
Good job.
Yeah, right? Yes, please help me out with all these things, because I'm still learning. It was apparent that this idea of fantasy and reality was a lot closer to being realized on screen. And that you could take this abstract concept of, these angelic beings singing through music, the world being created, and find a way to represent that was like, oh my God, that's it. Like it was actually within the first day of doing research that I was like, I feel like the excitement around that was really impressive. Like it was kind of willing me to go that route. And so like, you don't get many opportunities to play God, so let's try and do it. You know what I mean? And so, I'm also really interested in science phenomenon and blurring the line between, art and science. And actually all of us, Mark, Mauro, and Katrina, we all kind of have that essence in ourselves. And so it was like, what is a phenomenon that is real that could kind of interpret this musicality as a maker of the world? And that's where, cymatics or clad knee plates became kind of the things that came together for it. And so I quickly was thinking, well, all of these kind of cymatic patterns create shapes. What if the symbology of the show kind of formed from the earth, formed from sand, formed from water? We were thinking about many different elements. And I quickly mocked up a frame utilizing some, a classic Tolkienian tree. I think it was the tree of Valinor or one of those trees, but made it out of sand, and was like, I think this is it. And I sent it over to Mark and Katrina, and they were like, holy expletive. We think this could be a really cool opportunity to do it. So that's kind of the genesis of the idea.
Absolutely love that, because the music of the Ainur Lindale from the Silmarillion, which any Silmarillion reader would recognize immediately, is calling the world into being through music, literally pulling the world together through music. And that's exactly what you're doing with this opening sequence, is calling the world of the Rings of Power into being through that music. I just think that's an absolutely beautiful connection to Tolkien's world. Can I ask a follow-up question to that then? So how are you weaving some of the main themes of the show through the images and symbols that you were creating?
Mm-hmm. I think that was part of why we were so excited, because it does have these ideas of creation, of destruction, of transformation, which is so important to this world building. Obviously magic, but it's this form of like primitive magic, of like forces that you don't see that control things or make things happen. The idea of time and space, which is so critical to this world. So impermanence, longevity, destruction, realms that come and go. I mean, there was so much epicness to this idea of using a natural phenomenon to represent that acoustics, even the harmony and the journey that they take, that they're forming and coming apart. And I think last, the idea of like flaw, the organic nature of them, was also seen pertinent to this world.
Yeah, sort of
Wonderful.
that natural imperfection.
Yeah.
The fact that it isn't going to be perfect or symmetrical or always in place. There's the random elements to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the terror also happened, because when they bought the concept, we knew that it had to be done with a computer, because it turns out cymatics actually don't form perfect Tolkien trees.
I was going to say.
And so that's when we started.
It's inconvenient.
Yeah, but we don't like all computer generated anything, much less main titles. And so that we were like, how do we make that's the other reason the concept is so strong, is that it's real. It is actually beautiful on its own right, just when shot at our own kitchen table, which is the first thing Katrina did. But we knew that ultimately it was going to rely heavily on particle systems and CG. And so we jumped into action, and we're so thankful to Fernando and Mauro and their teams at Mac and the Nexus Group, because the whole team, I mean, they're the best in the entire world at what they do. And there's so much craft to that. And Mauro was at the shoot. We can talk about that in a minute, but Katrina jetted off to Spain in Madrid. And Mauro, even though he's leading the computer generated, and he was the first person at the shoot probably that you even met, Katrina, studying how, if nothing else, how it's actually working in real life, so that you can put the computer to work to look to behave that way, instead of the instead of there's nothing like seeing it. It's very, like Katrina said, it's filled with flaw. It doesn't do what you think it's going to do. One side of a plate might be falling apart while the other's holding still, which in itself is a great metaphor for civilizations and time.
True.
Because that's the way real life is. It's like one part holds still and the other feels like it's falling apart. Sounds like my life. But it's that's what's beautiful about. And then maybe some stray particle, like maybe something bigger, will race across the plate like a dog off leash for no reason. So it's very feral that way. We use that term over and over, feral, flaw. and Mauro was watching it really keenly. So,
Mauro, maybe you want to talk about, emulating something that is so organic. And maybe if you've ever had anyone tell you to break things as much as we asked for.
Yeah. Was the most difficult part because me and my team and my teammates are some kind of expert in simulations. But in this case, we have to emulate really close, as close as we can, a magic effect. Was real, but was some kind of magic effect in real. And we had to emulate in some kind to see the schematics, but adding some kind of layer to push the magic and to push it as maximum we can, because the show, because this kind of world, because this kind of history of the Tolkien literature, and was very, very difficult for us to try to don't lose this base and match as maximum, but pushing the magic part and adapting to the forms without losing the basic idea. And was great to can be in the shooting and see with our eyes how it's behaving, this kind of particles, this kind of sand, the different kind of sand, because it's not the same. The big sand and small sand behave different with this kind of vibration and this kind of matching. And we had to decide in that moment which kind of sand and this kind of things, and was great for us, but was a challenge.
Yeah,
Is normally in my daily job, I don't have the opportunity to take the reference in my hand. Always the reference in my case it's in Google on something like that, and in this case we had the opportunity to have in front of us and export from them all the actions. But you have to do it in a proper way and to make it possible. And I don't know, I make it in a short time in a short period of time, and make it in a big show and make it spectacular and make it, oh wow. And
we don't
ask
much.
Yeah, maybe sometimes seems something easy at the result. I don't know in other eyes, but maybe it seems some kind of easy thing, this kind of simulation in 3D, but wasn't because we had to preserve the essence, and because it was the base of the project, your idea, and it would be easy to lose in our minds and keep wrong ways. And finally, I think we, in between all the team, you and us and all the team in the shooting and all the team before and after the shooting, was a hard work to put it in order and make our minds blow and be magic but realistic in terms of project. What I'm talking about, but was an incredible experience for us.
It sounds amazing because, I mean, to sum it up, what you're doing is you're trying to emulate something organic, but in an inorganic fashion, but keep that authenticity of the organic through it.
Exactly. We try to be very, very, very similar to the exact effect in the reality. But when we see some of the things that are not working, we had to think about to push it and to make it more spectacular, because finally my work is make cool things. all the people are waiting for me to make cool things, and not always it's possible if I have to attach a lot in something that it's not working in this way in because it was working but not working in the way for a show and for make some kind of forms that are not possible in mathematics. And we had to make this kind of travel between these two worlds, and trying to not be all in one, all on the other, to make this line in between. Was cool to experiment in that. I love physics, I love scientists, I love these kind of things, and was very good for me to can handle these two worlds, the digital and finally for me the physical and the reality.
Well, we are going to get more into that later. I think we wanted to talk about where that line is, and we'll revisit that and a few other questions after the break.
We're about to get back to our chat with the team from Plains of Yonder, but we want to remind you that when you finish listening, the talk continues all night long at the Rings of Power wrap-up, all through the off-season too.
We have an amazing community of listeners, and they really do keep the conversation going, from the Rings of Power group on Facebook, our Twitter feed, our Reddit community, and more.
Now on Facebook, just look for Rings Wrap-Up. Be sure to follow the page so that you get all of our posts, but also join the group for some great discussions on the show and on each of our episodes.
If you're on Reddit, look us up at r/RingsWrapUp and follow us on Twitter and Instagram where we're at RingsWrapUp.
And a quick favour to ask, if you like the show, please help us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and recommend us to your friends.
All right, folks, time for us to get back to that interview. Sara, I believe you've got the next question.
Okay, so coming back to you, Anthony, because I'm just loving the way in which, even though you weren't particularly familiar to start off with Tolkien's world, that you were actually drawing from the genesis of Tolkien's world to make this. But there are a lot of people out there who've come to Rings of Power having never read the Silmarillion. So what were you hoping to convey to somebody who was completely unfamiliar with that particular aspect of the Legendarium?
It's interesting because the idea of a title sequence isn't often to tell a full story, right? It's just to set the tone or, create a vibe or, a feeling. And so our benchmark for a lot of these types of narratives, so to speak, is how does it make one feel? And really that became the essence of, if you don't know anything about Tolkien or you don't know anything about the Lord of the Rings, does it imbue the essence of death and life? Does it imbue the major themes of destruction and creation, of good versus evil, or just the essence of evil inserting itself in a way that might be a discordant, right? Like there's elements that are general themes of Tolkien that we wanted to try and create symbolically through sand. And that's as simple as it kind of was. The symbols that you kind of picked apart in the intro, some of them were placed there on intention, or they were intentionally put there. Other times people, like any form of art or poetry, found meaning in these things that we never meant to put there. So even the super fans of the show were pointing out things that we were like, that's not what it meant. But hey, go for it, because
example.
Tell you do you.
Death of the author, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Well, and this is because we didn't get access to the entirety of the show, right? And so we were thinking certain things would mean one thing, and the showrunners even kept a lot of it from us too. So the mystery of what we were doing was kind of serendipitous, that some of these symbols just happened to be further in the show. For instance, one of the things that was really interesting was that, we got some early access into some of the creature designs and what we would, eventually see in the show. Right. And the sea monster became a really kind of important, or sea dragon. I'm not sure what it is. We call it sea monster. Was a big
sea
thing.
Worm,
and so,
I think they call it a worm at one point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were kind of obsessed with trying to represent this way in the sand. And so that moment where, you get that slithering, that was a reference to the sea monster. How it was interpreted was Melkor's discord coming into the music.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
which is yes.
I'm not gonna. Which is yes. We did intend that.
Why not both? Yeah.
Yeah. And it just
absolutely.
Yeah. It just happened to like bubble up that way because the way in which the music changed and Howard Shore's orchestration, and then the way in which we felt like that was the dark section. Yeah. It felt appropriate there, but many people interpreted that completely differently. And, that's the power of, I think, creating something that's uncontrollable. An idea that's uncontrollable is going to do what it wants to do. And I think that's what's fun about this stuff.
It's also the beauty of anything that's creative, though, isn't it? Because you put that out there and then people get to take from it what is meaningful for them. And I think that's really beautiful, actually.
Well, that's perfect when you're adapting Tolkien's works because, of course, he was always about applicability rather than allegory. It wasn't so much a one-to-one as what each individual reader would get out of it. You mentioned the music, and that actually leads me to my next question. Bear McCreary has written some incredible music for the show, but the main title theme was written by none other than Howard Shore, who most people know for his work on the Jackson adaptations. Can you talk us through the process of how you collaborated with him and his work in creating this introduction?
The show had been working with both of those guys, and we don't know the whole backstory, but they were both involved with the show for a long time before we got the call. And that score in its essence existed, or in some version, all created on a computer as the so-called theme song, front runner. And so that we were pretty early in the process, and we knew that we'd need that right away, even before we shot, to really make this, because the concept needed to be so glued to the music, horns and human voices and drum beats, and everything needed to be more visually connected than your typical title because of the concept. So the first thing we asked is, what's the state of the score and when will it be done? So we built it to a temp track, like I said, that Howard Shore and his team built from, I guess they build it, from parts synthetically. And then they went and actually scored it in London with a whole symphony and everything pretty late in the game and deep in the winter when we're getting closer to finishing it. So we sort of met halfway and it worked out pretty well.
I think one thing that's interesting about the experience for me was that we were able to have a call with Howard, with Amazon facilitating the discussion. And it was just kind of like this is someone who I've looked up to from a standpoint of a composer. And I'm sitting here being like, hey, what if you move the horns just a little bit sooner? And he's like, terribly. Would you mind? And I'm so, giving Howard Shore musical direction. He was amazing. He was like, yeah. And he was a one or two word response answer. But he was such an awesome, you would think sometimes, never meet your heroes, but he was a hero. Right. I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is super cool.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, really
fun.
Yeah,
and he did not write back going, could you move that edit about 17 frames that way?
Right.
Yeah, we were able to take a lot of, if we're trying to show you sound visualized what it would look like, that's the idea of cymatics. We were able to use the score to kind of develop chapters, to kind of develop the journey. So going from this awakening where the sand first starts to move, the particles, through kind of this emergence and growth to kind of a more celestial, sacred section. And then there's that power struggle part where the music gets really dark. So there was all these different sections that are built into the music that really allowed us to organize our icons through that kind of journey till you get to the title reveal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that really was the framework for the whole edit. We had a little white title above our edit the entire time for over 7 months. This is the emergence section. This is where the trees build. The celestial section, sun, the stars, the moons. And then we pushed through that to on and on and on. So it was our framework to create a so-called journey across 90 seconds.
Amazing.
It's pretty amazing what you can accomplish in 90 seconds, I have to say. Sometimes it feels like you're telling 4 or 5 minutes worth of story, if you will. It's so densely packed with expression, with moments, with power, with symbols. You really did, I have to say, an incredible job in that, because like James said, it's the only show I don't skip the opening sequence to. It's pretty incredible stuff.
But talking of these symbols and icons, I'm just going to come back to Katrina, because you dropped one into the conversation there a few minutes ago. You said, are you going to talk about the Triskelion? I think you should talk about the Triskelion.
Well, it was such an interesting process because, like Anthony mentioned, we didn't see anything. We didn't read any scripts. So even how important something became what it was when we were first designing to what it ended up in the show. And the Triskelion was one of them, which felt like a bigger deal in our production. And then when you finally see it, it is the machine that's working to do the Allied or for the Mithril. You know, it's over so fast, and we had really poured ourselves into this symbol because it is such a gorgeous symbol, right? The Triskelion representing these triads. It's very Tolkien, this idea of spirit and mind and body, or past, present, future. Like the Triskelion, depending on culture and time period, it means so many things in so many cultures. And it's, so I guess, his borrowing from many cultures and folklores, that symbol felt really important. So I think I wanted to rewind it when I watched it in the show. I was like, wait, I need to see it again. I need a bigger deal. So it's kind of fun.
There was one other symbol too that was on the cutting room floor of the actual show, which is after it goes from the cross. There's like a section where it's like a cross, and it forms these kind of like two organic lines.
Yeah.
That was a reference to Mount Doom, the volcano. If you look at the shape of it, it kind of comes up like this, and then it opens up. So it was this idea of the eruption of volcano, and we modeled it directly off of a shot that they had provided us. But I don't think that shot made it into the final, because I don't remember seeing that exact thing that we were doing.
Well, it isn't the final shot where he's looking over the land and the Southlands become Mordor. It's in the background. The volcano, it's way back there, but it is that exact same shape. Wow. And like we said, the internet had plenty of time to find that. But it's not. It wasn't a primary thing. But it's been fun to watch people speculate what that shape is, but that's what that shape is, of erupting volcano. Kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
People's eyes are fast. I mean, some things became something else, and then things like Númenor, we formed Númenor only during transition. And Mauro can speak to how hard that was, probably. But, it's hidden. It's between icons. It's during the transition, which felt right for Númenor, being that it comes and goes, and it's this floating island. Like, there's a lot of connection there.
And I didn't think anybody, it was pretty light. I was like, I don't think anybody's going to see this. It took like an hour for people to there's no
maybe a little longer, a week maybe.
There are a lot of us out there picking apart every frame we can, I promise.
Don't try and slip anything past a Tolkien nerd.
Got nothing but time to watch those credits over and over. So.
And now we've got 2 more years to watch them over and over.
That's right.
My next question actually may lead into Mauro talking more about that sort of stuff. I want to come back to this whole sort of intersection of practical and the computer generated, because the sequence did an amazing job that made it impossible to tell where the practical ended and where the digital began. Can you tell us some more? I mean, you talked before about sort of the fact that cymatics can't produce Valinorian trees easily. Where was the line between what you could achieve practically and what you needed to rely on CG for?
The line was not evident. This line are you talking about? This line was in the first part of the job of the work, because even if the final production it's mostly digitalized, a whole thing and involves all the things. It's the same importance. The practically the reality. For me, it's the same importance of the digital part that you are seeing finally. And this line it's not clearly marked because if you don't have the schematic effect, the schematic behavior, you don't have the digital behavior too. Yep. So this line for me doesn't exist a lot, and it's not evident. And I can say from here to here, I can it's the real and practical thing, and from here to there, it's the digital part, but it's not true. It's not true. For me, it's the same. The whole thing is the same. And sometimes we are going forward and backward, and you have to go backward and again put on the machine, the kinematic machine, and even if the machine is not doing a tree, is doing the same behavior or the behavior we need, and we have to go backwards, and then okay, we don't have to lose the path. We have to go backwards and see again and take again the reference. I don't like this word, but because it's not only a reference, but we have to go back and then okay, refresh our minds, and when we are stopped and we don't know how path to take, when you go again back, you find the doors, a new doors, a new windows to make it better in the CG part, and reveal the tree or the triskelion or any logo you need. But this line for me doesn't exist in this way.
Mm-hmm. Well, that all sounds pretty simple and easy, really. So what was the hardest part?
Yeah.
They both bring, and by the way, like Mauro and Fernando and Katrina and Herman were at the shoot in Madrid, and they shot everything. They shot triangle plates, circular plates, square plates, skateboard-shaped plates, all which create different patterns, so that Mauro and his team could, just like what he said, he's like, what would a curve do that's a half a curve that's falling apart? And you can go back and it is, you're right, so much more than reference.
Exactly. That's it. And a little point on that is in the shooting. We well, me know the guys that make the shooting, because I only was taking part, but not this part. The guys that were doing make a tree with hands, the tree with the sand with hands, and with the sand over a plate, but use schematics to dissolve it. And this is not the final shoot that is in the show, but this was very important for us as well, to see how can dissolve in this kind of schematic vibration thing, having a tree and dissolving it, and then putting forward and backward the video, and see, okay, if we did this in real, if the machine can do a tree, maybe we'll do something like this. And was very important, this part as well. So the shooting was critically important in this way.
A lot of it is, Mauro hinted at it earlier, but if you have heavier particles, or some of our particles were almost sand-like, so we had many different grades of sand and sieves that we were finally sieving and trying to get a special mix that would behave a certain way, so that you're almost leaving behind a trace as these things move. And a lot of those little elements have been composited in, so that fine dust or certain layers underneath are added into this digital magic that they're creating to help give you that Z-space aspect as well, so that, it's physics, it's complicated. Yeah, exactly. So it took a lot to try to mimic nature, which is very powerful.
The computer really makes everything quite graceful and actually more cinematic than real life, like almost a beautiful slow motion, because it does bring that grace. But the live action has this buzzing, feral, not necessarily cinematic, and an all CG piece would actually be more graceful, poetic, perfect, clean.
Yeah.
And but so when you see that buzzing, even on the first shot, those two big arcs, it's graceful, and a big part of that is Mauro's particle work, but then with it is that kind of undercurrent of stress or something that's buzzing. And we kept adding, we're always more and more of that, and we're always pushing to push that in. And it kind of distresses it in a weird way. It's sort of like scratching a really nice, I don't know, car or painting or something, but it's the two combined in a beautiful way.
It creates a really nice tension.
The perfection of imperfection, in fact.
Exactly. The first test we did, like you are saying, Mark, were too much too much gracefully and too much perfectly. And you see, and okay, that's cool, but it's not the same essence. We are losing some essence, and this is the point you are talking about. We had to add this kind of stress at the borders because this behavior were on them, and this behavior have the personality because without it, it's good, it's cool, it's great, but it's not. Have not the personality that we need, and it's not unique. It's not unique, maybe.
It reminds me of wabi-sabi, the Japanese concept of imperfection.
Exactly.
One of the other things that I think was a guiding principle for us was that no matter like what we were trying to illustrate, so if it was a symbol or if it was a specific shape, we kind of always went back to the question, would real world phenomenon of cymatics create this shape, or would it create this form? And if it didn't, then we kind of had to design it differently. So like, for instance, the shape of the volcano, right? We could have easily designed a better looking volcano, but we designed something that was more cymatic feeling. So if the real world phenomenon couldn't make it, it didn't really make it into the cut.
Okay.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think one we lost was we had a sword on our original list. And that was one where it just didn't feel right. It felt artificial in that world that's kind of more primordial. So shapes that, like Anthony said, are more organic or more primordial, more, just kind of, you can imagine time and space forming them.
Okay. So things like the volcano, or even things like the trees. I mean, even though cymatics might not be able to create that particular image, it's still an organic image because we're talking about trees as opposed to metallurgy, a sword, a created thing. Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, one last question before we run out of time. I've seen, of course, on a lot of television shows, and I'm thinking at the moment of one of my favorite sci-fi shows, also on Amazon Prime, called The Expanse, that kept a basic pattern of their opening sequence, but would update it between seasons with information, with little bits and pieces that gave you hints of what might be coming up. Do you know if you're going to be doing an updated version of the credits for next season? And if you are, or even if you aren't, what would you want to do with that update?
I think the one thing we can answer, we don't have any intel, but the one thing we can answer is it was designed as an idea that could flex, that could integrate new material, that could have parts disappear and be exchanged out. So it was designed with the idea of an entire world that's evolving over time.
Okay.
Anthony or Mark, to you?
Yeah, and the world of cymatics is deep, and I feel we've barely scratched the surface. I mean, the shoot material alone, you could make a feature film from. It's so beautiful, and it was quite painful as one of the people on the edit to let things go and leave things behind, because like stunning imagery that just couldn't make the cut. And maybe it was too abstract or more abstract, but the different types of materials and different types of action or camera views into this world, we hope we can expand upon it for years to come.
That would be great. I think we need to have a director's cut edition of the opening credits, though. It sounds like, Mark, we need a 3 or 4 minute version then. But thank you guys so much for your generosity today, for joining us. What a fantastic conversation this has been. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
For your great podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Well, folks, that concludes another episode of the Rings of Power Wrap-Up. Now, be sure to join us again next time, even though, well, we don't know precisely when that will be. The thing is, we are very much looking forward to some truly deep dives covering the entire season on each individual storyline very soon.
It might be a particularly deep dive on Númenor.
Oh, yes.
Not that we got to that bit just yet.
Not
wow.
yet, Sarah.
Not yet.
That's
not
right.
yet. Okay,
Season 4 is my guess, but all right.
Season 4 will be making a true splash. Anyway, thanks to the team that helps us get this show out to you. Editor Jordan Rannells, Barliman Becca Davis, social media manager Casey Hilsey, and website guru Phil Dean, who has now been promoted so high I've got nowhere else to go.
Yeah, he's right there. He's Elendil's right-hand man, from what I understand now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of the website, give us a visit there at ringswrapup.com. We've got show notes, our online storefront, and even some outtakes.
You'll also want to take a look at our library page. This show may be about the Amazon adaptation, but the three of us are first and foremost fans of the books. So we provided links for you to get all the lore. We do get a few pennies from the purchases you make there, so thank you very much in advance.
Indeed. And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and, well, most of all, your cymatic plates and bags of sand to barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want a chance to have your actual voice heard, well, you can send us audio of you asking your question by visiting podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
But be sure to send the question to Barliman too. Now, we've been able to rely on Barliman lately, but we do get a lot of mail, so we'll get to you when we can. Your question or comment may be featured on a future episode.
As always, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.